Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the eDiscovery channel. This is Tom O'Connor from eerily free of pre-hurricane weather New Orleans. We're all getting a little worried down here because this is like, if we don't get them now, we're going to get like 6 of them in September, which really bothers us. So we're keeping an eye on that. I'm with, as always, Rocky Messing, still in Tel Aviv. Rocky?
Yeah, still in Israel. Yep.
Still fighting off the Israeli Secret Service, protecting your new prime minister?
I am, and we're happy to say that, things are nice and calm in the neighborhood other than the protesters on a nightly basis. But you can't do much about that. So
well, you just gotta tell your brother to go home. That's all there is to it. Oh, you mean protesters against the prime minister? I get it. Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry. We are extremely happy today to be joined by Rich Robinson, who is, and Rich, tell me if I get this right, Director of Legal Operations and Litigation Support at the Toyota Motor Company.
Perfect.
There we go. All right. I'm proving once again that I can not only read, but write.
We're proud of you, Tom.
Man of many talents.
You've been there less than a year still? About a year?
2 years now.
Oh, my God. I see that COVID has like compressed my entire concept of time.
Me too.
It's like being in a bubble. Like, I mean, well, you've got a job. My job fell off the table. I've been sitting around, like I was talking to Craig Ball the other night. He's going, I don't know what to do. I've cleaned the house twice, did all the projects. I had a project that was a disaster the other day, so I did at least kill a Sunday that way. Right. One of those home improvement things that nearly killed me. That's a different story. But yeah, I've just lost all track of time. You were with J.C. Penney.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah. So, well, let's go way into the Wayback Machine. I've known you, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years maybe. But I don't know your backstory. So how'd you get started in this crazy business?
Tell us.
It is a kind of an interesting story, right? Which is true for a lot of people in this industry.
They couldn't take another boring story about how you.
Yeah, we like it.
So my degree, I have a degree from Georgetown University in psychology.
Okay.
And when I graduated, I went and worked for a group home for troubled teens. I ran a home for troubled adolescents back in my home state of Rhode Island for 3 years.
Okay, so now let's just pause, because now see, we're learning stuff all the time. I'm from New England.
Yeah.
Grew up in the Boston. I was born in Vermont, but then my dad was a school teacher. Where in Rhode Island?
So a little bit all over the place. Although you can throw
a whole lot of
end up in
Massachusetts.
But mostly right around the Providence area, right? So East Providence, Cranston, Warwick. So not basically when people talk about Rhode Island, where in Rhode Island are you from? It's either Newport or Providence that we're talking about. So Providence is the area.
What's the town with the whaling museum? That's New Bedford, right? Mass?
That's Massachusetts, yeah.
But isn't that on the other side of a bay that's on the Rhode Island border?
It is. Narragansett Bay kind of cuts Rhode Island in half. So
This is geography. Woo!
Get Gansett. No, see, for me, that was a flashback to the wonderful days of drinking growing up in New England, when Narragansett was king of the local beers.
That's right.
My dad drank. Everybody drank Narragansett. It was a great. Are they still around? Is it?
No, they. Well, actually, I believe that they've come back. They were closed when I was growing up. They weren't there any longer. That brewery still existed. It was just an empty.
Right.
Empty warehouse for years.
Cool. Okay, so you worked in Rhode Island. Sorry.
Yeah. So I worked in Rhode Island for 3 years, managing a group home for troubled teens, which I always like to say was my best training for dealing with attorneys. That's how I got into the field. But no, my wife.
Now you can't put them in the cooler, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I realized I couldn't raise a family on the money I was making from social work.
Yeah.
So I always had a propensity for technology. So I moved into IT space and got a job working the help desk at a law firm in Boston. So that's kind of my entry into the field, and I moved from help desk to help desk manager to application.
Downtown Boston, one of the big firms, or
Mintz, Levin, Cohn Ferris, Kowalski.
Oh yeah. Our old buddy Ron Friedman ended up at Mintz for a while.
That's right. Yeah, he was
After
there.
You were gone, I'm sure. Yeah,
we were there at the same time.
You were?
Yes.
Oh wow.
Yes.
All right. Ron's a great guy.
Ron from originally.
Yeah.
And
cool.
From a technical perspective, like it was just a hobby of yours. It was. I mean, obviously you went for psychology, so not on a technical side there, but were you just like the tinkerer type growing up? Where
absolutely, I had a TI 81 computer and played the Chisholm Trail, and I was the kind of kid that took apart the speak and spell, and then tried to put it back together. So yeah, it was always just kind of a hobby, something that I always loved doing. And then when I got into the legal tech space, I really kind of loved.
You were a king among men.
Yeah.
Being able to take apart the speak and spell made you a god.
That's right. That's right. So I got into the app dev space for legal. So I learned, Visual Basic for applications, and was building applications within the Microsoft space for the law firm, and then learned SQL, and then I got invited or kind of voluntold to work on a project for a large civil matter. It turned out to be one of the longest trials, civil trials in the state of Rhode Island, in the history of the state of Rhode Island. It was lead industries.
Still with Mint?
What's that?
This is still with Mint?
No, actually, I moved to a law firm in Rhode Island, Adler, Pollock, and Sheehan, and so we were involved on the defense side in the lead industries of America or the state of Rhode Island versus the lead industries of America. And so there was a SQL database that the Department of Health had just kind of dumped on the defendants, and they asked me to try to put it back together. So I had one of those kind of walls that were built with tables, and I had primary keys tied with tacks and strings to figure out how that table was put together, and it just hooked me into litigation support. That was it for me.
Wow. That's
so
cool.
Then you went from being a god amongst men at the help desk to the emperor of the known universe, being able to reassemble a database, right? That was
that was so much fun.
People probably just stopped when you walk by, like, it's
loud. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty much
as long as it's not like turning them into stone or anything.
Yeah. How long did that go on?
That was the trial lasted 6 weeks, but the matter lasted years.
Yeah.
So it just was really interesting. We found out that the Department of Health had been flagging every incident of lead poisoning as a unique incident, when it turned out that it was the same child visiting
the hospital
multiple times. I began to understand that litigation was all about the story that you tell, and I just was really interested in uncovering those rocks and finding the path to the truth. So,
not joking. I mean, your degree in psychology and dealing with, I would assume that you dealt with at least one or two stressful scenarios while dealing with troubled teens. Yes. Probably did help in terms of the ability to explain and to help and to guide in a useful way. Because the attorneys, again, that's all that they're looking for, is how do I properly tell that story within the confines that I've been given. So, your ability to expand those confines by providing them more information, but then do it in a way that actually makes sense, was probably very, very valuable at the time.
That's absolutely right. I mean, I still to this day, I tell people, I don't say that I'm a technologist, and I don't say that I'm not an attorney. I'm not I'm a translator, right? That's what I do. I'm a linguist, and I help translate the technology into the legal, and the legal into the technology, and I facilitate that conversation. And certainly, yes, my background in psychology helped, at least especially in the early days, with that process, because something that we learned in psychology and working with those teens was an approach called tabula rasa, blank slate. So you came in and you heard everything. You didn't bring your personal approach into it. You just allowed the child, the adolescent, to just release onto you everything that they were feeling, and then you could mirror it back in a way that was more appropriate. And a lot of times, I joked about how working with those teens made me able to work with the attorneys, but it is true in many ways. That tabula rasa served me well early on, where those high stress scenarios where you've got days until a motion is or response is due, or days to trial, or you're in trial. Certainly, one of my favorite periods in my career in this industry has been working the hot seat in trial. And it is high stress, and you're working 20-hour days. You're up until 2 in the morning, and then you're up again at 6, bringing everything to trial. And that psychology background certainly played into my ability to handle those situations and deal with the stress that was involved in it. But it was exciting. That was a great time in my career.
So two questions. I'm sorry, Rocky. Yeah. How big was that database? Do you recall?
I do not recall. It was large.
But large back then compared to what we see now.
Oh gosh, yeah, no, it doesn't even compare.
Yeah, I remember what we thought was a huge database in a case for the federal defenders 20 years ago was like 1 million records. It was like,
yes. It was on that. Yeah, 1 million records was kind of where.
But with the technology at your with the string and thumbtack approach, 1 million records is a lot. And you said you did the hot seat at the trial, so you had to handle the technology for the attorneys in the courtroom?
That's right.
Yeah.
So
Gail had to do that for that very same case for the defenders in the Hells Angels, and she said it was one of the highlights of her life.
It's so fun.
Yeah. It's because that's actually what I was gonna pick on a little bit, is the fact that today I find that and we'll keep going through your career in a moment, but I find that today a lot of people in the industry are very specialized, right? You're an app developer, you're a consultant, and if you're a consultant on eDiscovery, you're a consultant on information governance, you're a consultant on trial technology, and a lot of people don't get the opportunity to experience the process through, even if you're working for a law firm, right? Which is more likely to give you those opportunities. But a lot of people still stay in their lanes, and they don't have that opportunity to see from beginning, right? And the filings to evidence reconstruction all the way through trial, like they stop. And I think that's probably, again, something that was very valuable, I would hope, in your career.
For sure. Yeah, I grew up in this industry becoming a jack of all trades, right? I mean, I was in the weeds on everything from the data collection. I was doing forensic collections. I went and got NK certified. I built databases and DB TextWorks, to handle TIFF images, and I learned the back ends of iPro and Zprint and had all of those, Karen's directory printer, like all of the little tools that we would find in the industry. And so I learned all of those, but I was from, when you think about the EDRM, which was certainly that came later, but from start to finish, I was involved in every step of the process. And you're right, Rocky. It doesn't exist really anymore. People are in their lanes, and it's sad for people coming up in the industry that they don't get the exposure that I was able to get early on in my career. But things have become so specialized that the training doesn't exist that allows people to really feel the entire breadth of the industry, which is why I think organizations like ACEDS that are trying to expand the education in the industry are so important. But I don't know that we are at a place yet where the education is out there that gives people that kind of experience that I had in the space. Yeah. I'd love to see that. That's one of the reasons why I am such a proponent of mentorship in this space. Is that people like me need to be able to give back, because I had my mentors. I had the people who trained me in the hot seat and who trained me in the databases and who just had the overall knowledge to bring me up. So that's why I'm such a big proponent of giving back to the community in that way.
Yeah, I think that it's definitely interesting, because I've also had the opportunity through ACEDS, and through different positions in my career to now become that mentor and be able to provide a little piece of giving back. And it's interesting that a lot of the people I find who are going through the ACEDS exams, they're specialized. And they kind of at the beginning tend to ask that question of like, okay, I understand that I should get certified, but what's the value of like everything here and everything here that's not in my job description? Yeah. And you're right, it's not the same as that hands-on experience, but we got to do whatever we can to give them at least a taste of, from start to finish, because like I know even within my team at Microsoft, everyone's gotten ACEDS certified, and including people who just concentrate on holds and people who just concentrate on data processing. I mean, across the board, they found it very, very valuable to get that breadth of knowledge. And I do think that ACEDS is probably one of the few that are offering that wide of a spectrum within the industry, other than going and starting your own overall consultancy, but then it's a little bit harder to figure out how to make money off that. So yeah. Okay, so you finish at the law firm in Rhode Island, and then where'd you head?
So then I made the move to Texas. So, the old saying is, I wasn't born in Texas, but I got here as fast as I could.
Nobody I know says that.
Only people in Texas say that.
George Bush said that, but come on.
Yeah. And it's funny too, because if you had asked me in Rhode Island if I would ever live in Texas, I'd have told you not in a million years.
Native New Englanders are very provincial.
Well, and that's actually why I wanted to get out. I wanted to have a bigger experience.
Yep.
But I knew I wanted a small city. I liked Providence, with access to bigger cities. And so I ended up looking at Austin sort of on a whim. I really wouldn't have considered Texas. But friends told me, oh, you should look at Austin. It's a really cool city. And so I did, and absolutely fell in love with it. It's just
some people in Texas don't really feel that Austin is part of the state.
That's right.
Much like Berkeley is sort of a separate republic from the state of California. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's a kind of an oasis. In
the
sea of red. But it was a very cool city, and I loved my time there. I worked at a law firm in downtown Austin, but it really wasn't a place to raise a family. I wasn't partaking in a lot of what makes Austin such a cool city. I wasn't spending my weekends on 6th Street or on the lake. So I wasn't in Hilton Street. I was trying to just raise kids, and the commute was difficult because the infrastructure in that city hasn't really kept up with the population. So I ended up making the move to Dallas a little over 10 years ago, and have been here ever since. And I worked at 2 law firms in Dallas before moving to the vendor space. I worked for Exact Data Discovery for about a year. I call it my walk on the dark side. And it was a valuable experience, but I certainly think business development is not for me.
So you went over on the biz dev side.
Yeah, I was a.
So you had a sales quota.
I was an eDiscovery consultant.
Yeah.
But I had a sales quota.
I've been there. Yeah.
So it didn't work out quite the way that I wanted it to, and I certainly didn't work out quite the way they wanted me to.
Right.
But so it was a valuable experience, though, to kind of look behind that curtain and understand what's happening on their end.
To see what's going on there, right?
And, there's a lot to understand about what makes an eDiscovery vendor successful. And that was valuable experience.
More on the business side of it, or more on the technical side of it? Like which
both. Side? I got exposure to the technology that they were using. They had some proprietary software for discovery, and they had a forensic team. They had a team based in India. So I really got to learn a lot about how that business was run, as well as sales and understanding where the costs and the overhead was associated with on the vendor side, and really developed my personal kind of ideas about how a relationship between a vendor and a client should result in a win-win scenario, right? That the vendor should make money, but the client should get services in a way that push both of them forward.
Well, that's just crazy talk.
Yes.
God.
No, but it's true.
No wonder they didn't like it.
The best relationships there are when both of them realize that there's a benefit to both. And you're going to end up with if you don't want your vendor, now speaking from the corporate side especially, or the law firm side, if you're trying to squeeze them for every penny and you don't want them to make money or profit, services are going to go down. Something's got to suffer there.
Yeah.
So and as long as you feel that you're getting good value as a client, then you should be happy that they're making money. So
that's absolutely.
That was the word I was going to use, is value. That both sides have to realize there's a value proposition there that they can engage and work together on. That must have been a great experience for you then going into the corporate arena.
That's exactly right. I think that really set me up to move into the corporate arena, and for both times, right? With JCPenney, even though they were not in a great financial position, even when I first joined them, they had enough leverage so that I could have these conversations and say, I want my vendor to be a partner. You're going to be an extension of my, eDiscovery team. So we're going to work together. Both of us are going to have skin in this game. I don't think I would have had that outlook if I hadn't had that time on the vendor side.
Right. So at this point, then you realize, okay, being on the vendor side or at least being in sales on the vendor side is not the place for you.
Yeah.
And then from there you went directly to JCPenney?
No, actually, so I went from Dallas law firm to the vendor, back to another Dallas law firm, and then to JCPenney. And JCPenney was an interesting one because at the time I was the president of ALSP, which is Association of Lit Support professionals and of the Dallas chapter. And JCPenney reached out to me. It was a cold call via LinkedIn, and their talent development team reached out and said, you know, your LinkedIn profile looks like exactly what we're looking for. We're trying to hire this eDiscovery person, and a sort of a records management person as well, right? And so I said, well, I'm not interested. I'm really happy where I am, but let me come and talk to you because I'm really interested in the industry getting better ideas about job descriptions, and your job descriptions all over the place. So I went and spent like a half a day talking to agency of litigation, ethics and compliance, and their HR people, and we just kind of worked through their job description. And you know, I said, you know, your information governance, your records management piece is very paper centric. You're trying to move this company to a different place. This really needs to be information management or information governance. It was kind of, that was 2012-ish. So that's, you know, right when InfoGov is starting to become
a thing.
Popular.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we went through this whole thing, and then about 6 months went by, and they contacted me again and said, listen, we loved what you said. We changed our job description. We went national with the search, and we keep coming back to you. Your resume is perfect for this role. Would you at least come out and talk to us again?
So you're saying you designed a job description that basically said, hire a guy named Rich at a law firm.
That was pretty much Dallas. All it said.
Yeah.
Sneaky.
Yeah. Smart. Very smart.
So that's how it all worked out. And then when I went and talked to them, they really did seem to have the idea right about what they were trying to accomplish.
I was always impressed with your team there. You and I and the team had lunch a couple of times over your tenure there. And great people, bright people, very engaged. I was always impressed with the team you put together there. I'm curious, though, you mentioned how that was 2012. InfoGov was just sort of, the light bulb was just going on.
Yes.
So, and I don't want to ask about any details about specific things or differences, but how has the approach to eDiscovery and what you do changed now, where you are now, or just, you know, chronologically where you are now from where you were in 2012?
So, I mean, my role, so I was at JCPenney for 7 years, 7.5 years, and then I moved to Toyota, and the role at Toyota was, you know, information management or information governance is off of my, you know, I don't manage that. It's actually not even in legal.
And who has it? IT?
It's IT, yeah.
Okay.
Although there's a data governance sort of working group of which I'm a part, which is a good thing. But my role has shifted more in the direction of legal operations than information governance, right? So, and that, I think, my career has really definitely followed that path, right? The eDiscovery role has sort of morphed over the last 2 decades.
Well, it used to be very reactive, right? We only reacted to litigation, and now there's a sense, at least at the corporate level, I think.
Yes.
There's a sense of, wait a minute, we got to be proactive about that. We got to have a strategy, a business strategy. Explain, though, for folks. I mean, a lot of people hear this phrase, but may not know what you mean. What is legal ops?
Yeah, so I mean, legal operations is a That's a great question, Tom.
We got 3 minutes for you to sum up everything.
That's right. Yeah.
So the funny thing is that it's different for every organization, and it's difficult to define, right? You look at
which is good for your job, I would say.
It is good for my job, and that's part of actually why my career, I think, has been so successful is because I've ridden this wave of how these changes happen.
And
from very reactive and very tactical to more strategic as we go along. And the eDiscovery person was so well adapted to these changes because that's how we grew up in the space. The technology was changing constantly, and we were asked to be these problem solvers, right? I was in 2003. I had a series of SQL tables dumped on me, and I had to be the sleuth that found out how how to put this together in a way that I could tell a story from it.
But there's no set of instructions. There was no workflow.
Yeah, right. No manual.
That's right. That's right. So so the eDiscovery person has traditionally always been this problem solver, this sleuth, and so so that has set us up as the knowledge manager. Used to be the librarian for law firms and for corporations. The eDiscovery person is so well adapted to be able to slip into the knowledge management space because the technology has outpaced that role. So the eDiscovery person can slip in cybersecurity, privacy, legal project management, all of these roles that are within the clock wheel of legal operations are so well suited to the eDiscovery person because our skill set is so based in problem solving and technology. So, however you define legal operations depends from corporation to corporation. ACC has their own legal operations maturity model that's slightly different than the clock one. You're going to find, basically, you're going to pull those two models up, and you're going to pick and choose what falls under legal operations in your space, right?
Right.
But coming up with a clear definition, well, we don't have time.
That eDiscovery will eventually. I mean, well, first of all, you've got legal ops and you have eDiscovery, right? In your job description. Do you think that at some point in time, overall, those two are going to end up either merged, or eDiscovery is just going to be a subset underneath legal ops, as opposed to having that, your job is both of them, as opposed to just legal ops with eDiscovery underneath it, if that makes sense as a question. Because I find that, at least in the vast majority of corporations and my peers that I talk to, they are still two totally different teams. First of all, half of them, eDiscovery is still being done under IT and not under legal. But even where you do have it under legal, it's still separate. It's either part of the litigation team or its own division reporting to the GC, and it's not under legal ops necessarily when you have a formal legal ops position.
Right. Yeah, I think that it makes sense for eDiscovery to become part of legal operations in most corporations, because eDiscovery tools and applications of those tools have become more operationalized and cross-functional as eDiscovery tools start to be leveraged for compliance, risk, cyber, privacy. Like there's a lot of ability within those applications, especially as AI is getting more and more mainstream, to be able to leverage those functions. And we look at Microsoft and M365 E5 licenses. The E5 license has as much or more functionality for the cyber and InfoSec team and the compliance team as it does for the eDiscovery team. So moving eDiscovery from a tactical role to a more operational role, I think just makes a lot of sense. I
think the privacy side of it.
That's a whole other wrinkle now. Yeah.
Yeah. But a lot of people still, even though, yes, there was a lot of discussion around GDPR and things like that, but people still don't necessarily think about the privacy ramifications on an eDiscovery side and on a general, supervision and compliance. And they all have to be working hand in hand. And when they're separated out and they're two totally different spaces, it just becomes that much harder for you to take everything under consideration.
Yeah, it does.
Let me ask real quick though.
Go ahead, Tom.
Rick. Well, I want to go back to Ron Friedman. You talked about how all of this is now kind of becoming encompassing, and you mentioned knowledge management. I think about that time period. Ron, before he was with Mintz, he was at I forget, big firm in DC, but he was a big KM guy who was building tools to do this in-house. Peter Krakauer, I know, is another one. Those guys are kind of sitting there now looking at us going, I told you so. Right? Yes. Like, you didn't listen to me 10 years ago. And now Ron's working for Gartner. So it's like, see, I can tell all you idiots that, no, you're not idiots, really. You're just kind of slow. You're slow on the uptake. But do you get that sense? Because you went through that same thing too. Like, some of these tools were there. They just weren't cohesive. And quite frankly, I don't think lawyers were paying attention to some of the stuff people like you were saying.
No, that's true. I think, all through my time in this industry, I've struggled with attorneys who prefer to do things the old-fashioned way. They self-described Luddites, right? They prefer to just have paper, and a lot of the eDiscovery tools that we deal with are still very paper-centric. They're designed like, you're recreating a banker's box and just flipping through that.
Can you say TIFF files? Sure you can.
Exactly. Right. So that's, the industry is very kind of slow to change.
Yes.
And, we're seeing all these abilities. I saw it, gosh, back in 2012, I was having conversations with, because I owned information management at JCPenney as well. I was saying these tools that we're building in the eDiscovery space can do so much to help us take care of the rot, right? Redundant, outdated, and trivial data in our system. We've got these, I was working for a 100-year-old company who had, jumped into the digital space in the 80s, right? They were one of the first online retailers.
Yeah.
And but the data was so outdated and so old, and they didn't have a good way to categorize. The tools that we had in eDiscovery could do that, but I also had an issue with eDiscovery service providers and software providers not understanding that their pricing model was very much based on litigation and not on a service, an enterprise service, right? Yep. So they're charging per gig, and I'm saying, no, we're talking about petabytes, and you're only
per user. Don't forget per user.
Per user, and we're only talking about computer time. It's not like I just need to churn through this data and auto categorize, and
right.
And I couldn't get the providers to think outside the box, right. So yeah, there's always going to be a lot of, we have this data. JCPenney was another great example is the AI, right? Where JCPenney could tell you where to send jackets, winter jackets, and when to send them, right? They knew that based on the big data. They had a data lake. They were getting through that information and deciding based on consumer purchase where to send the right materials at the right time. Well, why aren't we doing that in the legal space, where to provide legal services before problems happen? And they're not there yet. It's starting to get there, but it's
Right.
Yep.
So on the AI side, definitely we're starting to see that. But let's go back on the model side, and I think this is going to have to be the final point before we start wrapping up. But
we can talk about this stuff all day, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. It's a problem. But do you see that the vendor models, because again, the vendors are partners. They're not just out there being vendors, and hopefully you've got solid partners that you work with. Do you see that the model that they work under changing? Has it changed since 8-9 years ago at when you started at JCPenney and you were struggling with trying to get them to accept this difference on a corporate level? Or are they still, do you just have there's always been one or two vendors out there who were good at understanding that and good at modifying their model for an enterprise. Do you see as an industry, is that shifting? Do you feel that it's still pretty much where it's been?
I do think that it's shifting. I think that there's a lot of focus right now on innovation and disruption. And unfortunately, some of that is just innovation for the sake of innovation, right? Disruption for the sake of disruption. There's not a lot of thought in some areas. But I keep harping on the fact that I want my providers, my service providers, my software providers to be partners with me, right? That I want you to come work with me and help me figure out my problems. Let's work together and come up with some new innovative ways to approach, whether it's data analysis, whether it's new technology or functionality inside your application. Let's work together on it and build something new together. And then, again, this is right back to that same issue of a partnership where both parties have skin in the game. I might pay a small amount to work on this project with you, and eventually you're going to be able to take that product and market it, right? You're going to be able to get a win out of this if we work together and come up with something interesting, but I need you to innovate with me. And I think that more and more, both software providers and service providers are open to that concept.
Right, they're learning it slowly.
Yeah.
Okay, Tom, so why don't you take us out before we totally run out of time here?
You never run out of time. You just have other things to do. Time is infinite, as you well know. Not going to run out of time.
Philosophical. We never do that on this show. So.
No, that'd be a first, right?
It's against
actually, we have the penultimate question first, Rich. Beatles or Stones?
I'm a Beatles guy.
Oh, man.
Sorry.
Yeah, Tom, you're losing this one.
I can't get no satisfaction, I'm telling you. Okay, the ultimate question. If you could spend a day with anybody from our profession, living or dead, going back doesn't have to be right immediately from eDiscovery, given your background, in any of the different buckets that you've worked in, people you've come across, things you've come across, going as far back as you want. Who would that person be? And you can do anything you want with them. It doesn't have to be reassembling an SQL database. It can be quail hunting in the plains of Texas, or fishing in Narragansett Bay, or anything you'd like to do. Who is it and what would you do?
So I love this question so much, and it's so difficult to pick somebody from my background in this space. And so what I would really, really love is to be able to put together a table from the industry. And I honestly, I think back to, there was a time in this industry where there were luminaries, right? That people that could just engage you for hours talking about both the philosophy and the tactical in this space. And so honestly, I would love to have a dinner table, like multi-course, hours long dinner table with alcohol and and food with you, Tom, with Browning, Marion, with Ralph Losey and Craig Ball, and just be able to just sit and talk for hours. That would give me no end of joy to listen to the conversation. Maybe not even be a part of it, just to listen to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I had a couple of dinners with Browning years ago, and man, I could just listen to that guy talk. But if I was lucky enough to have other people like Ralph Losey and at the table where the two of them could go back and forth, gosh.
Back in the early days, well, not the early days, because I didn't come along in the early days, but the mid-level days of the ABA Tech Show, when it was at the Sheraton in Chicago, down on the river. We used to have a thing where, and this is back in the days when you could smoke indoors, and people would come back to the lobby bar as they were returning in the evening from various functions. You know, a vendor would have a party, or a group of people would have gone out to dinner, or whatever. And by about 10 o'clock in the lobby bar, there'd be a group like that. Jim Kane would be there, Browning and Craig and Ralph. I mean, I could go on with a list of people that, 10, 12 of them. And of course, the liquor was like George Sosha. That's how I met George. Jim Kane introduced me to George at that show. And the liquor was flowing. I would get ridiculed because since they allowed smoking, I would light up a cigar. And various people would object. So whenever we get back to legal tech again, Rocky and his brother Shimmy and I have started sort of a new tradition around cigars. So we have to get cigar-friendly people at the Carnegie.
Or Scotch. You can just go with the
Scotch. Or both.
Yes. Or both. Right. I'm saying it's up to you.
It's up to you. Yeah, it's totally up to you. And at the last legal tech, we it had gone from the three of us having cigars to I don't know how many people we had. We had
like 15 people there.
Yeah, there was a bunch of people. I remember Horrigan from Dave Horrigan from Relativity was there, and that's just, so we'll keep you advised of that, because it turned into that sort of just a free for all of talking about not just the business, but whether the Saints are indeed a better team than the Ravens, and the pressing issues of the day.
That's right.
Neither one of us, of course, will concede anything about the Cowboys. That's just.
Oh, for sure not. No, it's all about the Patriots.
Yeah.
The who?
The Patriots.
See, so the Patriots is a problem because it's hard to truly talk bad about that. I mean, they've got the record to show it.
Yeah.
It's hard to, but then again, we have beat them in the AFC title game a number of times. So anyway, we'll go from there.
All right.
Meaning are we the Ravens? Is that the?
We are the Ravens.
Okay. We are the Ravens.
Yes.
In the investing universe, we need the Ravens or the Capitals. I'm not sure if he's on the Bullets. They're not even the Bullets anymore, are they?
No, the Wizards. Nah.
The Wizards, yeah.
Well,
NBA basketball. I was so glad to see somebody win that last night. The NBA is to basketball what the WWF is to wrestling. It's just become ridiculous. I literally last night switched over from the championship game to the U.S. playing Spain in the last pre-Olympic games because they were playing real basketball. And it was great to watch. I mean, Kevin Durant and Jason Tatum flying up and down the court. Both the Gasol brothers are on the Spanish team, so they had tag team Gasols in at one time. And it was it was basketball. So anyways,
I always enjoyed Olympic basketball.
Yeah,
the NBA has never been
much better, better. So in any event, Rich, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Always a pleasure talking to you, Rocky. Rich was in town about a month or so ago with one of his sons. They were making a tour of hot spots of the country, and they stopped and had lunch with me here at our little local diner. And
that was wonderful.
It was a great time. Yeah. So always a pleasure to talk to you. Hopefully, maybe New York.
Yeah,
in January. I don't think anything's going to be on the table this fall, the way things are shaping up.
Yeah, I'm currently planning on EDI, but
yeah, see,
fingers crossed that
I have to pay full consultant freight to that, which really I'm just too cheap to do.
Yeah,
I love that show. I love the people. Patrick's a great guy. He puts on a great show, and I love the people who are there. Say hi to Gene Eames for me. I'm sure he's always there.
Yes.
I miss seeing him. That's a great conference, but I unfortunately won't make that one. Santa Barbara this year?
Yes.
Yeah. So you got that going for you.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thanks again. As always, a pleasure. Rocky, thanks for the time, and we will see everyone next time on the eDiscovery channel.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.